Jack worked as a cargo technician on Station 12R, a dusty mining colony far from Earth. His job was simple: scan shipments, mark damaged goods, and send reports. It was boring work, but it paid enough for food and a place to sleep. Jack didn't ask questions. That's what kept people safe out here in the galaxy. But on one quiet evening, something strange caught his eye. He was checking crates from a small freighter ship that had just arrived. Most crates were sealed with proper markings, tools, or in machine parts. But one crate in the corner was different. It was covered with a thick tarp, locked with chains, and didn't show up on his scanner. Curious, Jack glanced around. No one was watching. He used his scanner override and carefully unlocked the crate. As he lifted the tarp, his eyes widened, in shock. Inside was a small alien girl, curled up, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked no older than 10 in human years. Her skin was pale blue with a soft purplish glow, and her eyes, big, glowing violet, stared at him with fear. She wore a torn cloth dress, and her wrists and ankles were bruised from tight metal cuffs. Jack stepped back, heart racing. He had seen aliens before, but never like this. "Hey," he whispered, holding his hands up. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't speak. She just stared, silent, afraid. Jack looked around again, then leaned closer. "What are you doing here? Who put you in this box?" Still no answer. She pulled herself tighter into a ball. Then he noticed something on her collar, small writing in an alien language. Jack's scanner translated it. "Property of Yarrick Trade Group. Do not open." Jack's blood turned cold. Yarrick Trade was rumored to run illegal operations. He had heard stories about smuggling, forced labor, and worse. He had never believed them. Until now. This wasn't cargo. This was a living child, someone's daughter. He looked at her again. Her eyes were wide and filled with pain. Jack took a deep breath. He knew what he was about to do was dangerous, but he couldn't leave her here. "I'm getting you out," he whispered. Jack pulled off his jacket and gently wrapped it around her small shoulders. She flinched at first, but didn't resist. He reached into his tool bag and cut the cuffs from her wrists and ankles. She winced but stayed still. "Come on," he said softly, lifting her into his arms. She was light. Too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. Jack placed her in the back of his small repair cart, covering her with blankets and equipment. If anyone saw, they'd just think he was hauling broken tools. He drove slowly through the docking bay, nodding at the guards as he passed. No one stopped him. Back in his quarters, Jack cleared off a small bed and placed the girl down gently. He brought water and protein snacks. She didn't touch them at first, just stared at him with quiet, suspicious eyes. He sat beside the bed, not too close. "You're safe now," he said. "I don't know your name, but I'll take care of you, I promise." For a long time, she said nothing. Then, with a trembling hand, she reached for the water. Jack watched, heart heavy. He had just broken the law. He had just made enemies he couldn't see. But for the first time in years, he felt like he had done something right, and he knew. This was only the beginning. Jack didn't sleep that night. The alien girl, still weak and scared, lay curled on the bed under a blanket. She hadn't said a word. But she had eaten a little and sipped some water. That gave Jack hope. He sat nearby, trying to think. What? Now he had broken station law. Hiding unauthorized life forms was a serious crime. If the wrong people found out, he could be arrested, or worse. But when he looked at the girl, all his fears faded. She wasn't just a creature in a cage. She was someone. Someone who had been hurt, mistreated, and tossed aside like trash. He couldn't let her go back to that life. The next morning, Jack tried to talk to her again. "My name is Jack," he said, pointing to himself. "Jack." He waited, then pointed at her. "What's your name?" She stared at him, confused. Then slowly she touched her chest and said one word, soft and shaky. "Luma." Jack smiled. "Luma, that's a nice name." He repeated it gently and she gave a tiny nod. That was the first moment they truly connected. Over the next few days, Jack did everything he could to keep Luma safe. He stayed away from others, skipped his work shifts, and even hacked the station systems to hide his location. He taught Luma a few basic words using pictures and gestures. Food, water, safe, danger. Luma didn't speak much, but her eyes began to show something new. Trust. One evening, while fixing a small light in the room, Jack heard a knock at his door. His heart skipped a beat. He quickly hid Luma behind a storage panel and covered the area with blankets. He opened the door a crack. It was Rico, one of the station's supply officers. "Hey, Jack," he said. "You missed your shift again. Everything okay?" "Yeah," Jack replied quickly. "Just feeling a bit sick, nothing serious." Rico frowned. All right. Just don't fall too far behind. Boss is watching everyone closely these days." Jack nodded and shut the door. He waited a moment, then carefully pulled the blankets back. Luma peeked out with worried eyes. "It's okay," he said softly. "He's gone." She crawled out and sat beside him. Her tiny hands were shaking. Jack felt anger rising in his chest, not at her, but at the people who did this to her. She was still afraid, still broken from whatever life she had come from. That night while she slept, Jack did something risky. He opened his old data terminal and searched the cargo logs for the freighter she had arrived on. It was registered to a trade company from the outer systems, Yarrick Trade Group, the same name that had been written on Luma's collar. He looked deeper and found reports, rumors, and hidden records. Yarrick wasn't just moving goods, they were moving people. Children like Luma, smuggled, sold, and enslaved. Jack's fists tightened. This was bigger than he thought. He now understood that keeping Luma hidden wasn't just about helping a lost girl. It was about fighting something evil, and that meant he couldn't do it alone. He knew he needed help, but he had to be careful. The wrong person could report him. He thought about his old friend Kira, a transport pilot who hated corruption. Maybe she would understand. Maybe she could help get Luma off the station. Jack looked at the sleeping girl and whispered, "Don't worry. I'm going to get you out of here." Outside the window, the stars remained silent, but Jack's mind was no longer calm. He had made his decision. Luma was slowly healing. Her face still looked tired, but her eyes were no longer filled with fear. She had started to sit by the window, quietly watching the stars, sometimes tracing shapes in the air with her fingers. Jack noticed it every time. When she did that, tiny sparks of light would follow her hand. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, but then one night, he saw it clearly. Her hands glowed faintly when she moved them, and small threads of light floated in the air like dust shining in sunlight. "Luma," Jack said gently. "What is that?" She quickly hid her hands and looked away. "It's okay," he said. "I'm not scared, I just want to understand." She stayed silent, but a few minutes later she drew a tiny symbol in the air. It hung there for a moment before fading. Jack was amazed. That's incredible. He realized Luma wasn't just from some poor alien race. She had power, something rare and special, and that made her even more valuable to the people who had locked her in a cage. That night, Jack couldn't sleep again. He sat by the door thinking. He had to move fast. The next morning, he sent a secure message to Kira using an old hidden comm device. She was an off-world pilot who owed him a favor. If anyone could help get Luma away from the station, it was. Her reply came back an hour later. "Meet me at Dock 7 in 3 days. Be careful, don't get seen." Jack felt a bit of relief. It was the first step toward escape. But things weren't going to stay quiet for long. Later that day, Jack noticed something strange. His room had been slightly disturbed. A tool was out of place. A floor panel looked moved. He checked the security screen on his terminal. It was blank. Someone had deleted the logs. He rushed to Luma, who was sleeping. She was unharmed. But the message was clear. Someone had been inside while he was gone. Someone was watching them. Jack quickly changed the lock, codes and shut off all station links. He turned the room lights red, setting them to emergency mode so no one would think to come in. Then he checked the scanner he had hidden near the air vents. It was showing signs of motion outside his walls. "Luma," he whispered, gently waking her. "We have to stay quiet now. Bad people may be looking for you." She looked up at him with scared eyes, then nodded. He handed her a small communicator, one that could flash light signals. "If I ever tell you to hide, go to the small space behind the panel and press this button. It will lock you in and keep you safe, okay?" Luma took it and held it tightly. For the rest of the night, Jack sat awake with a small tool in one hand and a makeshift weapon in the other. He didn't trust anyone now. Not the station guards, not the cargo crew, not even the officers. He now knew something deeper. Luma was more than a lost child. She had a secret, a power, and someone, somewhere, was hunting her. Jack whispered to himself, "They're not going to take her again, not while I'm breathing." And in the shadows of the station, unseen eyes blinked, watching, waiting. Jack knew the clock was ticking. The message from Kira said 3 days. But with someone already breaking into his room, Jack felt they might not have that long. He had to act fast and smart. Luma sat quietly near the wall, watching him as he opened old boxes and pulled out tools, wires, and scraps. He began building something. A jammer to block trackers, a hidden communicator, a signal flasher. Every small device had a purpose. "Luma," he said, showing her the things, "we're going to leave this place. But we have to be careful. Very careful." She nodded. Her small hands helped him, passing tools, holding wires. Jack smiled. She wasn't just a scared girl anymore. She wanted to help. That night, Jack moved through the quiet halls of the lower station. He stayed in shadows, using side paths that only old workers knew. He placed tiny signal repeaters to confuse station sensors. One wrong move and the security systems would catch them. But Jack had done this kind of work before, long ago, in another life. When he returned, Luma was waiting at the door. She pointed to the screen on his wall. A warning light was blinking. Someone had tried to access his door code. Again. He took a breath. "They're closing in." He opened a storage box and pulled out 2 old uniforms, one for himself, one small enough to fit Luma. They were dusty and worn, but looked like mining gear. No one would question 2 workers near the docks. He helped Luma into the clothes, tucking, her long hair under a helmet. She looked up at him with a nervous smile. "You look like a real worker now," Jack said with a gentle laugh. The plan was simple. Walk through the tunnels to Dock 7, meet Kira, and board her ship. But things never stayed simple. As they moved through the narrow service tunnels, Jack noticed something odd. Lights flickering ahead. Then voices. "Check every room. The girl is here somewhere." Slavers, not station security. Jack's chest tightened. "They're already inside." He turned and whispered, "Luma, follow me. Quiet." They moved through side tunnels avoiding patrols. But the slavers were well prepared. They had scanning drones and heat sensors. Jack used every trick he knew, blocking vents, laying false trails, using old power lines to hide their signals. At one point, they hid behind a wall as 2 tall aliens passed by, holding scanners. "She's close. I can feel her energy." Luma's hands trembled. Jack gently touched her arm. "Just a little more," he whispered. They kept moving until they reached the outer passage that led to Dock 7. But as they stepped into the corridor, a sudden alarm rang out. "Unauthorized access. Lockdown engaged." Red lights flashed. Doors began to seal. Jack grabbed Luma's hand. "Run!" They sprinted down the hallway as metal doors started closing one by one. Jack threw a small jammer at the last door. It sparked and slowed the lock for just a few seconds, enough for them to slide through. On the other side, a woman stood by a ship, dark jacket, boots, and a pilot's helmet under her arm. "Jack!" she shouted. "Get in, now!" It was Kira. They ran into the ship. The doors slammed shut. Jack leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Luma clung to his side. Kira stared at the girl. Is this her? Jack nodded. Her name is Luma, and she's more important than you think. Outside the ship, heavy footsteps echoed in the hangar. The slavers had found them. Kira turned to the controls. Hold on tight. The engines roared. The ship lifted off, but the fight wasn't over yet. Kira's ship flew fast, dodging laser blasts as it escaped the station. Jack held Luma tightly in his seat while alarms flashed around them. Kira was calm, focused, her hands moving quickly across the control panel. We're almost clear, she shouted. One more push! The ship jerked forward, then everything went quiet. Stars returned outside the window. They had jumped to safe space. Jack let out a deep breath. Luma sat beside him, looking confused but calm. Her hand still held his sleeve. They were free, for now. A few hours later, Kira landed the ship on a quiet moon hidden in a gas cloud. It was a safe place far from patrols. Jack helped Luma out of her seat and guided her to a small room inside the ship where she could rest. After she fell asleep, Kira pulled Jack aside. Who is she really? She asked. She's not just some lost alien kid, is she? Jack shook his head. No, her name's Luma. I found her locked in a crate. She has some kind of power, light, energy. I don't fully understand it, but someone wants her badly. Kira folded her arms. She's special. That's why the slavers came. They knew she was on the station. Jack nodded. They'll keep coming. The next morning, Luma woke early. Jack gave her a warm drink and some food. Then, something strange happened. She sat on the floor, closed her eyes, and placed her hands together. Small glowing patterns formed around her fingers, soft blue light moving like waves. Jack and Kira watched in silence. Then Luma slowly opened her eyes and pointed to the collar still locked around her neck. Jack had forgotten about it. It was thin, but strong, made of alien metal. Is it hurting you? Jack asked. She nodded slowly. Then she whispered a single word, one of the few she had learned. Stop. Jack understood. The collar was more than a tag. It was blocking her power. He grabbed his tools and began working on it. The lock was complex, unlike anything he had seen before. Kira helped, using her ship's scanner to find the weak spots. After an hour of careful work, there was a click. The collar fell to the floor. Luma sat still. Nothing happened for a few seconds. Then the air around her shimmered. Light flowed from her hands, soft and peaceful. The ship lights flickered, not from damage, but from the energy Luma was now releasing. Jack stepped back in awe. Luma looked up, no longer afraid. Her eyes were bright, her hands calm. She was free, not just in body, but in spirit. Jack smiled. You're amazing. Kira nodded. She's not just a child. She's something more. Luma stood, slowly raising her hands. She made a shape. In the air, a symbol Jack didn't understand, but it felt important, as if it meant hope. Then she spoke again, her voice quiet, but clear. Thank you, Jack. It was the first time she had said his name. Jack felt something deep inside, like a promise had been made between them. But the moment was short. A warning light blinked on Kira's console. Trouble, she said. Someone's tracking us. Jack turned to Luma. We'll protect you, no matter what. She nodded, her fingers already glowing again. They had broken her chains. But now, they had to face the storm that was coming. The ship shook slightly as Kira stared at the radar. They're here, she said. Same signal as before. It's the slavers. Jack rushed to the window. A large black ship had dropped out of warp space. It was bigger and faster than theirs. And it wasn't wasting time. It was already sending smaller crafts toward the moon. How did they find us so quickly? Jack asked. They must have planted a hidden tracker on the station or maybe even on my ship, Kira replied. Doesn't matter now. We need a plan. Jack turned to Luma. She was already standing in the hallway, calm but alert. Her fingers glowed again with soft blue light. She wasn't panicking, she was ready. "We can't fight them in space," Kira said. "But maybe we don't have to. There's an old mining station on this moon, abandoned, full of tunnels and machines. We can hide there and set traps." Jack's eyes lit up. "Perfect. I worked on places like that for years. I know how to turn machines into defenses." Within minutes, the trio left the ship, running across the dusty surface of the moon in suits. They reached the mining station just as the first enemy shuttle began to land. Inside, the station was dark and dusty, but still had power. Jack and Kira split up, working quickly. Jack activated old lifts and conveyor belts, reprogramming them into moving walls and fake doors. Kira set up tripwires and flash bombs. Meanwhile, Luma walked quietly through the tunnels, drawing patterns on the walls with her glowing hands. The energy stayed in place like invisible marks, only visible to her. Jack met her near the control room. "What are you doing?" Luma looked at him. "Marks. Confuse them." Jack smiled. "Smart." Then came the sound of metal feet hitting the ground. "They're inside," Kira whispered through the comms. The slavers moved quickly, tall armored figures with scanning gear and weapons. They searched each hall, expecting to catch an unarmed group. But they were wrong. As they entered the first chamber, an old mining belt came alive and threw sparks in every direction. The slavers scattered, confused. Then a wall closed behind them, trapping them inside a maze of moving machines. Kira triggered a flash device, blinding their sensors. Jack dropped heavy crates from above. Luma, standing at a distance, raised her hands, and her marks on the walls flared with light. The slavers who passed them fell to the floor, confused and dizzy. But the leader of the slavers, a tall alien with red armor and cold eyes, was not so easily fooled. He found Luma near the power core of the station. "There you are," he said, raising a device to control her, but this time she wasn't wearing any collar. Luma stepped forward, eyes glowing bright. "No more," she said. With one swift motion, light exploded from her hands, not like a weapon, but like a wave of energy that pushed him back and shattered the device in his hand. Jack and Kira arrived just in time to see the final moment. The slaver leader stood frozen, disarmed and defeated. Then he ran, calling his team back. "We'll return," he shouted as he fled. But they didn't. Their ship left orbit, disappearing into deep space. Jack turned to Luma. "You did it." She looked at him with soft eyes. "We did it," Kira smiled. That was more than survival. That was a message. They had defended themselves, together. And now, the galaxy would know that Luma was not a prisoner anymore. The dark clouds above the mining station slowly began to clear. The dusty moon air felt lighter, and the quiet halls echoed with a new kind of hope. Jack stood by the window of their small ship, watching the stars. Luma sat beside him, her violet eyes shining with calm and confidence. The long fight was over, but their journey was just beginning. "We did it," Jack said softly. "We're safe." Luma smiled, a real warm smile. Not just safe. Free. Kira joined them, her face tired but happy. "The slavers won't come back anytime soon. Your story has already spread through the outer systems." Jack looked at Luma. "How do you feel?" She paused. "Different. Stronger. I want to help others. Like me." Jack's heart warmed. "We will. We'll find them. Free all the children." Kira nodded. "There are more. Too many." Together they made a plan. They would use Kira's ship to travel from system to system, searching for signs of the slave trade. Luma's power, once chained and hidden, would now be their greatest weapon. Jack would repair and upgrade their ship, and use his knowledge of cargo routes and station systems to track down the criminals. Days turned into weeks. Their small crew grew as they rescued others, children, young aliens, even adults, hidden in secret places. Each rescue was dangerous. Each escape was a battle. But with every life saved, their hope grew stronger. Luma became a symbol, a light shining in the darkness of the galaxy. Her story inspired others to stand up against the slave trade. One evening, while they rested on a quiet planet, Jack and Luma walked outside under a sky full of stars. She looked up, her fingers tracing soft patterns in the air. "Why do you help me?" she asked quietly. Jack smiled. "Because everyone deserves freedom. And because you showed me what courage looks like." Luma reached out and took his hand. "You broke my chains. Not just the metal ones." Jack squeezed her hand gently. "We broke them together." They stood there, two different beings from two different worlds joined by trust and hope. Their fight was far from over. But with friendship and courage, they would face whatever came next. A new dawn was rising, one where no one would be enslaved again.